Man, I just realized I've recorded for like 40 minutes. This is going to be a long episode. Sorry, fellas. I mean, it's going to be a bumper episode. You're welcome, fellas. So following the card down, Kevin Holland versus Michael Page. I'm going to be honest, lads, I'm not going to give you much in-depth information on this because I couldn't bring myself to watch Michael Page's fights again. The distaste I have for how his career was conducted sort of outweighs any joy I get from watching him fight. Watching him leap in from way out of range against guys who just aren't on his level, and were picked because they weren't on his level, isn't particularly entertaining. And I don't think you can glean a lot of fighting knowledge or knowledge of his style from it. And then when he fights people who are good, legitimate fighters, he freezes. It started with Fernando Gonzalez back in the day, who wasn't even that good. You know, I used to have arguments with Teach of the Junkie trying to tell me he was like top 15 in the world. And then he got cut like immediately after this fight. Then, of course, there was the fight with Paul Daly that was teased for ages. And at one point, Scott Coker even had a press conference where both Paul Daly and Michael Venom Page were there, and he announced different fights for them. It was so stupid. But then they got Paul Daly versus MVP together. It was the Battle of England. And, you know, Paul Daly's blamed for wrestling, but they both froze up. MVP did nothing. Fights Douglas Lehman the first time, gets knocked out, gets some more tune-ups, a literal librarian with a 3-1 record for your second best welterweight. Great shout, great shout. Fights Douglas Lima again, gets the win by being in England, and split decision, mind you. Didn't do anything in that fight either, they just stared at each other. This is well into Douglas Lima's Tyron Woodley phase of not doing anything and backing himself onto the fence. Fights Logan Storley, gets taken down loads, loses, a split decision again. That's basically it. Fights Mike Perry in the boxing ring in bare knuckle and loses. When he fights world-class opposition, he doesn't look great. His best wins are over people like Ross Houston, the Cage Warriors champion, which no one takes account of because nobody knew who Ross Houston was, and MVP got the decision, so they were like, oh, didn't knock him out then? With all of that being said, I give him a good chance against Kevin Holland because Kevin Holland only fights one way. I'd like to think that I've been pretty consistent in saying that MVP is clearly a good and talented fighter. That was what annoyed me so much the entire time. And Scott Coker has a history of doing this. You know, he used it to elevate Nick Diaz into the position where people thought he was the actual best welterweight in the world instead of GSP, just by fighting old men that he could easily beat. But this was really quite heinous, the way that MVP's career was built. And it was so obviously just to get knockouts, just to get impressive performances. And when you're watching people like Evangelista Cyborg Santos get his career ended by having a skull caved in, when he was like 40-something years old, he took the fight with MVP a couple of months after being stopped by TKO in a fight where I went back and counted. He takes like 100 unanswered blows before they stop it. It's just the absolute grossest part of MMA. If I ran a promotion and I had one talented guy, I could make that happen. I could make him a superstar, or I could make him look like a superstar by finding bad enough guys for him to beat. But he's still talented. In my head, Kevin Holland is taller, but they're both listed at 6'3". Page obviously fights in the wider stance, comes in almost side on. But then Kevin Holland loves to fight side on and throw the big step up side kick. He fights in a way where he uses the traditional martial arts techniques, but not built on the base of point fighting, not with the in and out movement, not with the rhythm changes and feints. He's a bit more boxing, but with some Shaolin shit thrown in. There are things in this that MVP might spot and exploit, like Kevin Holland's tendency to lean back and use his height to whip people with hooks while he's leaning back, catch people coming in. You know, you feint him back and then you throw a high kick, or you feint him back and you hit him in a leaning position with your right hand or whatever. But there's also stuff about this that makes me quite compelled. Kevin Holland does get in people's faces quite a lot. He's not the most methodical ring cutter or whatever. You know, you watched him follow around Stephen Thompson. And when Stephen Thompson bit down on his mouth, his gum shield, he was actually able to bang with Holland quite effectively and turn him back that way. But the aggression of Holland, someone sent me the gif of him saying, either way, he's getting smacked. And I think that's a good, Kevin Holland is going to turn up and try and put it on Michael Page, even if we find out he's woefully outclassed in the footwork and ring craft. If I'm Kevin Holland, I'm trying to make it messy. You know, he was using that elbow against Stephen Thompson because he broke his hand, apparently. But he's knocked out people with that elbow. I think it was Fluffy Hernandez he knocked out with that elbow before. The collar tie, left collar tie, right elbow. Bullying Michael Page into positions where you can get that would be good. Anytime you can bully Michael Page along the fence, even though Kevin Holland doesn't really like to take people down that much. Might as well fake a takedown because Michael Page will leap 10 feet in the air for a flying knee as soon as you show him something near the cage. It's been consistent throughout his career. He will sell out trying to knock you out because he doesn't want to deal with the double leg along the fence. I think it was the second Lima fight. He was just flying into the air, responding to shoulder feints, basically. Low kicks of the lead leg. Obviously, Douglas Lima exposed that. Well, I mean, it wasn't really a hidden weakness. If you fight side on and you rely on a lot of in and out movement and you're throwing yourself onto that front foot and you're planning to throw yourself back off it to get out of range, anytime you can time that front foot and kick it, doesn't even need to be a hard kick. You can just do that Volkanovski, like just your leg. Cover your head and just throw your leg up at their leg. That'll work well. It's Michael Page's job to show feints and either get Holland swinging at air and then second guessing himself, or timing the step in so that his foot is there planted and he lands a right straight as Holland's kicking. It's a compelling fight. Like I said, I haven't watched any of Michael Page's fights in a while. It's another one of those ones where if he wins, people will ignore the context or just make up their own context. Like if Marlon Vera wins, we'll say, oh, well, he deserved the title shot, even though he clearly didn't. And if Michael Page wins, people go, well, what was that about crushing cans? You're like, yeah, he's like 36 and he spent his late 20s and early 30s crushing cans.